Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Who's Left Podcast, a show about Indiana politics, history, and culture from an unapologetically leftist perspective. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and I'm broadcasting from Bloomington. Joining me tonight in just a couple moments, I've got Kate-Lynn Holley with me, a mom, a small business owner, a lifelong Northwest Indiana resident, and a former professional wrestler. We'll talk about all of that and, of course, her campaign. She did not exactly have a traditional path here. She, before becoming a Northwest Indiana realtor, like I said, she took her a step in the WWE, an experience that taught her resilience, strategy, and how to hold her ground under pressure. She even used her earnings from professional wrestling to pay for real estate school, where she goes by the Lemon Rice Realtor, a nickname she earned from sharing her love for the local soup specialty on social media. It is quirky and fun, and I'm interested to hear all about all that and more. Of course, this is an independent media project, and we don't paywall content. We certainly don't charge our candidates, like Kate-Lynn here, for interviews, and we don't have billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in the work we do, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the whole year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. And if a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you at this time, that's okay. You can help in other ways by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. That is HOOS Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it is PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Tell the others. Let's build a radically democratic Indiana together. Now, let's give a warm welcome to our guest tonight. There's Kate-Lynn Holley.
Hey.
Kate, welcome. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. You are such a bright and charismatic presence on social media. I did not get an opportunity to see you light up the room at the convention this past Saturday, unfortunately, but just love what you're doing out there, and can't wait to introduce you to our viewers and listeners here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for asking. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
So, listen, I like to start all of my candidate interviews sort of the same way, a segment I call the easy dubs, like the easy W's of journalism: who, what, when, where, right? Now, obviously, the what is this election season, right? 2026, got the midterms going on, got a big election coming up in November. The when is now, right? Campaign season, we're coming up on fair season, right? I bet you're going to be all over the circuit. We could even talk about the origin of professional wrestling in things like carnivals and fairs if you want to get into all that. But the who. Let us start with the who. Tell us about Kate-Lynn Holley.
So as you said, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a small business owner. I grew up in Lake County, Indiana, which is very, very tippy top. Like, it touches Illinois and Lake Michigan. And I grew up, the area is very diverse. I grew up in spots where you could like put your hand out the window and reach the house right next to you. So much more, low income areas, lots of rough neighborhoods. And I kind of had an untraditional sort of upbringing in my life. I did spend some time in foster care, and I was always I was like also born like into a really like conservative religious family, but I always kind of just I knew I was always different from them, and I didn't know why, but I kind of just had this attitude to turn my tragedies into triumphs. So I never let like the way I was growing up really affect my psyche very much. And I just learned to grow from it and to be scrappy. And then after high school, when I graduated, I actually did start college for musical theater. A lot of people are learning that now on my campaign, that I'm an ex-musical theater nerd. But I started college for musical theater, but like things are rough. I graduated in 2006, which means I stepped off the graduation stage and into a housing crisis and the Great Recession. So my path there ended quickly, and I was kind of just doing minimum wage jobs, working my way through being an adult, trying to make ends meet. And one day, a friend from high school that was in musical theater with me was like, I was working overnight at Steak and Shake, and they were like in from somewhere. And I was like, where are you guys coming from? Just making polite conversation. And they had just come from a wrestling show. I was like, wow, that's so cool. We kind of watched that sometimes when I was growing up. My brothers were really into it, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, if you think it's that cool, you should come by and try it out. And I was just like, I think I will. And so I went to a church that had a wrestling ring in it, and the rest is history. I kind of just put in my dues, as they call it, for wrestling, and continued to work like minimum wage jobs. Then I was working for North Shore Health Centers, which is a federally funded healthcare center, and got to see a lot there. That like in my area, there's a lot of people that, even though they're working 40 hours a week or more, it's still really inaccessible to be able to get quality healthcare. And then just working both of those things. And I, took every opportunity ever presented to me. And so I had already worked as a WWE extra. They call it extra talent. And when they're in town, they kind of have, once they get to like you, they just, they call you in. And usually it's like, when there's security guards running at them and they're like throwing security guards through tables, that's all local professional wrestlers. But they had a storyline where they were going to start the women's tag team division. And they were like, we need Bailey and Sasha Banks to, basically, I'm called a jobber. We need someone to do the job tonight. And me and 5 other girls, I believe. And so we paired off in teams of 2, and there were 2 teams were like, we know each other. We've worked each other a lot. We should work together. We know each other. We worked with each other a lot. We should work together. And so, cause they thought that was going to like be better for them, that they've worked been in the ring together. And there was one girl, I had met her for the first time, but I was like, okay, girl, let's just keep this basic, like headlocks, arm bars, just do the basics. All we have to show is we know how to take a freaking bump. And lo and behold, it worked out. Like keeping it simple worked out for us. We got to be a tag team and wrestle Sasha and Bailey on WWE Raw. And then you get paid to be there, even if you aren't seen, but you get paid more when you're on screen. So the money, I then used that to kind of like elevate my life. And I was like, I've wanted to do real estate, so let me take these classes. And I don't know, I like I said, I never let the circumstances of my life hold me back. And I hate the adage, pull myself up on my bootstraps, but I really did. I just took every opportunity I had and I pulled myself up on my bootstraps. I also recognize that's not as easy for everyone. I have a privilege, and I just decided to make something of myself. And so wrestling led me to like wrestling in London, overseas, and then COVID happened. Yeah, I had a very full 2020. I was going to go to London 2 more times. I was going to go down to Texas, Las Vegas. I had like plane tickets all set up for me. COVID happened, stole my last couple of years of wrestling from me, because I had always said I was going to stop in 2022 to try to have kids. Had a daughter in 2021. So I won't say I never went back to the wrestling ring, because I did have one more match this past August because my daughter really wanted to see me wrestle. So I did a tag team match. But now here I am. I am a real estate agent because I used my money to become a real estate agent. For 2 years now, I'm on my 2nd year. So about a year and a half, I've been on the local real estate MLS board, where I help craft local legislation for the real estate market. And a lot of people look around and they're like, whatever's happening in the world, in Indiana in our lives ain't it, and they want to do something about it. And some people just never take the next step. And so I was just like, if not me, then who? And here I am.
Fantastic. What a story. Now, it sounds like, from your upbringing, kind of, a difficult childhood, maybe a little bit, like you've always had to be a fighter. And then you talk about the, being into musical theater, later in high school and whatnot beyond. And wrestling is sort of the intersection of fighting and performing very, very much.
It's true. A lot of people, so like my musical theater skills definitely transferred over because I already knew it. In wrestling, it's called a gimmick. In musical theater, it's called having your character. But I already knew how to build a persona, to be able to connect with crowd through your persona. And wrestling moves, oh my gosh, I'm going to break the fourth wall. We train, and it still hurts, but we're learning the ways to hurt ourselves the least. But that being said, the movements are very similar to choreography. So I was able to pick up on all of that. And then, just we don't use the FAKE word, but being able to sell, like getting punched and stuff, like it came natural to someone who's used to acting. But you're right. I also have had to kind of fight to. I always say that I survived today merely out of spite. I've always just decided to look life in the face and laugh and keep going. So yeah, they do intersect. And I love that you use the word intersect because very early in my campaign, some grumpy curmudgeon was like, what does a pro wrestler know about politics? And I was like, brother, if you don't understand how professional wrestling and politics intersect, you don't understand wrestling and you probably don't understand politics either. So it has been very beneficial to be able to transfer over some of those skills.
100%. Great book, The Ringmaster by Josie Reisman. Can't recommend that one enough to everybody. Very much explains the way that the Trump era is explained by professional wrestling. Trump himself is a WWE Hall of Famer. And I tell people, Kate, politicians who are, sort of just starting to get into this, looking at trying to learn how to craft a stump speech or whatever. I say, do not go back and look at Obama. Obama was a great speaker, very charismatic, very, very skilled orator, lofty rhetoric. I think a lot of people anymore are sort of disillusioned by that. It's like, well, it's a lot of pretty words, but what does that translate to? I say, if you want to learn how to give a political speech, you turn on Monday Night Raw. And that is how you captivate an audience. Am I wrong?
I don't disagree. I believe that. So a lot of people are like, wow, when you speak in a room, people listen. Wow, you just light up a room. And I will say there is some aspect to it where there is this, I guess, aura about a person that is not like quantifiable, and they often call it. So I like I said, I've always realized I've just had it. Like I've been kind of like, people have always just been magnetized to ask me questions, or like I'll be walking in a store and someone will be like, hey, do you know where the hairspray is? And I'll be like, I don't work here, but you know what I mean? Like people are just inclined to speak to me. I generally know where the hairspray is, but, or I'll look it up on my phone, but like people have just always, asked me for help. I would say that I have the needed to be, the gift of gab. And I guess the gift of just magnetizing people to like want to know what's on that girl's mind. But definitely, I don't get nervous or scared much, but definitely early on when I was talking to rooms full of people, when I would be a little bit nervous about it in my head, I would just like snap in and be like, all this is a promo. It's a live promo. Instead of looking at the camera and being able to, cut out things I don't like or starting over, I'm standing centering with that mic in my hand, and I need to make the crowd react. And it really is just me needing to put myself into that mindset. And once I start to do that when I'm speaking to people, it's undeniable that, I'm able to captivate them and really feel what their vibe in the room, and be able to continue to kind of pull out from them what their issues are, and being able to think on my feet to be able to address those issues.
Yeah, and you have to be able to improv very much. In the ring is sort of an improv act as you go. Play the choreography, the improvisation, knowing your spots, being able to take a bump, and all those things. And maintaining character the whole time. I want to talk about your character now, kind of, as it were, and tell me about the Lemon Rice Realtor. Why Lemon Rice? I know. Listen, I know that in the region, lemon rice soup is very much a specialty, but all I really know about it is that recently there were a couple of Greek restaurants who were reputed to have the best lemon rice soup in the region. They got shut down as part of a gambling sting, and they were involved in organized crime.
You're not wrong. And even people were like, oh, did Kate-Lynn know about this? Like, why would I know about that? Just because I eat lemon rice soup. So yeah, Lemon Rice Realtor, it kind of, like most things in my life, it just came kind of organically. I think most people can tell just by probably watching this podcast or anything they've seen of me. I'm a quirky person as it is. That's just who I am. I like to call it pleasantly awkward. So I was like, watching all this stuff, and it was like, some ways to organically get leads for real estate is to like get active on social media. And I had already been active on social media, but I hadn't found my niche. And I wouldn't say I was looking for my niche as much as I was just like experimenting. I was like, I want people to know why I love, even though some people look down on this term, I want people to know why I love being a region rat so much. That's what they call us up here. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to show cool things to do in the region. And so, I showed around some quaint little stores and cool things to do with kids. But I was like, what is more region than reviewing lemon rice soup on TikTok? And so I started reviewing it, and it wasn't like ever a joke, but it was kind of just a joke. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go review some lemon rice soup. And the first one got like such good reception. I did a couple more, and they just started getting like thousands of views. I think one of them has over like 26K views and stuff. And it just, even though my follower count isn't very high on TikTok, everything gets a lot of looks because that ended up being my niche. Like, people in Northwest Indiana, they care about, they want you to go try their favorite place to get lemon rice soup. They care about where I'm going. And a lot of people have said there's places I didn't even know existed or carried it until you did a review on it. And in that same aspect, I'm very big on supporting local business and small business. So it just became a way for people to get to know more about where lemon rice soup is in the region. And I know we're almost done with lemon rice soup, but for anyone wondering what lemon rice soup is, it is a Greek dish, and it's actually called avgo lamano, and I hope I'm saying that right. I am not Greek, but the reason it's so niche in Northwest Indiana is when the steel boom happened, we had a huge influx of Greek immigration here to help fill the steel mills. And like most things, they brought that with them. Then when the steel boom started to slow down, they started to open up family restaurants, and it's a very beloved soup, a Greek dish, and they would just have it as their soup of the day. And then like the lemon rice soup you get nowadays isn't necessarily the original recipe of avgo lamano, because like most things, when it starts to get kind of introduced into a culture, it kind of becomes something different. So think Tex-Mex. It's not like real Mexican food. It's like Texas spin on it. Lemon rice soup is like the region spin on it, where original avgo lamano is made like with eggs, and now instead they use flour to thicken it. So the region has kind of taken this dish and made it their own. And for whatever reason, it literally is just in our region, and we love it. And it's our quirky little thing, and we're passionate about it. So I had to let everybody here know what a lemon rice soup is. And if you're ever up in the region, I want you all to try it and get get a taste of it. I know it sounds weird, but truthfully, it's kind of like a very warm, hearty chicken soup, sort of.
It sounds great. Folks may know I'm from up that way originally myself. I'm from Michigan City, so
Okay.
LaPorte County, and the Greek family in town owned all the restaurants. So very, very much sort of on the periphery of what you're describing. I don't want to risk you offending anybody, but who's got the best lemon rice soup in Lake County?
In Lake County, okay, because I have gone as far as LaPorte County. So in Lake County right now, keep in mind I've had to categorize it into 3 different categories. There's the most chickeny, because some people do a heavy chicken flavor, the most lemony because some people lean into the lemon, and then the most balanced. So right now in Lake County, the Great Greek in Crown Point has the most chickeny, and the most lemony in Lake County, I believe, no, most balanced is Cafe Stelio's, and the most lemony is probably, I'd have to look that one up. I think I'm going to go with Round the Clock in Highland, because the one in Cherokee does not taste like the one in Highland.
Interesting. I lived in Highland for about 2 years briefly after I got out of school, and I don't know if they had lemon rice soup because I always got breakfast, but I swore by Sophia's House of Pancakes when I was living up that way.
Sophia's is where to go for breakfast, but their soup doesn't have very much flavor, unfortunately.
Oh, sad. Not a political answer. Coming in with the heat there, Kate.
Hey, I told you, I am passionate. We here in the region, we region rats, we know our lemon rice soup.
So tell me about the rest of your district. I know the 6th is only partly in Lake County. This is a very large district that expands out into rural Northwest in Indiana as well.
It's massive. Gerrymandering is hell, my guy. So I have South Lake County, which is like Winfield, Crown Point, Cedar Lake, a little bit of Dyer, Lowell, a little town called Leroy. And then I have West Jasper County, which is where I live now. And that's like DeMont, Fair Oaks, Rensselaer, Remington, a tiny little town called Egypt. And then I have all of Newton County and all of Benton County. So if you started at the top of my district, it would take you almost 2 hours to drive to the tippy bottom of my district. And you cross time zones.
That is, that is crazy. That is definitely gerrymandering and how it works. It splits up communities of interest. There's probably not nearly as much in common between the folks in Dyer as there are out there in like Benton and Newton counties. For sure, and that's kind of the point and why they do this. But what are some hidden gems you've learned about the more rural parts of the county as you've gone out there and traveled, or the district as you've gone out there and traveled it?
So I actually just closed on a house with a client in Goodland, Indiana. And I would say before this, I knew Goodland existed, but I didn't know that there was so much cute, quaint little things in Goodland. So I think Goodland is a town I want to spend a lot of time just hanging out in. They also have something called like the Harvest Hangout, which is a store where like women or anyone can come have coffee, but attached to it, they have kind of like a sensory area for kids. So like, during the day, I guess moms could grab coffee or parents could grab coffee and, have a little chit chat and not be worried. And like, you could go do that at a park, but like, this is enclosed. So you don't have to be worried about the kids wandering off. So just things like that I have found. I recently ran a 5K in a town called Morocco at the Beaver Fest. And I was like, what an Indiana thing to call it Beaver Fest. But I also found out it's because it was Beaver Township. And then we went to this smoked meats festival, and I've learned that firefighters know how to freaking throw down on the grill, because they are the ones that like smoked all these meats, and it was so delicious. This by far the best cuisine I've had during this campaign, which like everything on a campaign revolves around food, and I'm not sure that my waistline is going to survive through November, because everywhere it's like, try this soup, try this chili, try this smoked meat, try this pancake, try this fried fish, try this, try this, try this. And so yeah, I gotta get in the gym hard.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're about to go into county fair season right about now, and yeah, you got a lot of elephant ears coming your way. Elephant ear or funnel cake? What is your favorite fried dough medium?
I'm gonna go with elephant ear.
I am also team elephant ear.
Yeah.
So listen, this has been a blast, but let's get into like the meat of your campaign. And your slogan is a roof, a table, a future. I may have gotten it backwards. It may be a table, a roof, a future. If I did, I'm sorry. But those things. So, and very much speaking to the affordability crisis in our country, in our state, for sure. And the roof. You are a realtor, right? This is very much the world you live in. Tell us what's going on with the housing crisis in your part of the state specifically. What are families worried about in that regard, especially?
So it's a nuanced topic, but yes, being a realtor is actually what ultimately made me decide to step up and run. I like to say, so on June 6th, the day of the convention, I even said in my speech, one of my speeches then, that June 6th, 2006 is when I graduated. So June 6th, this past, three days ago, was literally 20 years since I graduated. And in 2006, I basically stepped off the graduation stage and into a housing crisis. And here we are 20 years later, different housing crisis, but still a housing crisis nonetheless. And it's like, did we not learn anything? Like I said, it is a different housing crisis, but at its root, there's a lot of the same stuff going on. So the other housing crisis in 2008 was because banks were doing like fraudulent lending and letting people buy way over their budgets. And now we have a lot of safeguards against that. So stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. A huge issue now, however, is that stuff like debt and student loans and medical debt and even just the living wage not keeping up with rising costs are making people ineligible to purchase. And even so, I'm not sure if it's happening all over Indiana. I'm pretty sure it is. Here in Northwest Indiana, our electric company, NIPSCO, has in some cases tripled. So it's like someone who bought a house 3 years ago probably could have very much afforded it, but no one could have seen that electric was going to triple. And now people are starting to be late on bills because it's like, keep the electric on, or, risk, I don't know, not having, food to eat. So like, there's a lot of the same stuff happening. In our area, especially, one issue is, and I don't think this is a negative, smart decision, is we're so close to the border of Illinois, and Illinois does have higher taxes, that a lot of people are coming to Indiana to purchase their homes, driving over the border for work. But when they're selling their houses in Illinois, they're making such profits. They're like, wow, I'm going to save so much on taxes moving there. I'm willing to put this much more in cash over the amount I'm offering you in order to win the bid on the house. So a house that was worth, maybe, I'll make up a number, $500,000. Say they're throwing 20 grand more at it. Now that house technically is going to comp at $520,000. Now, think about an entire summer of that. So now it's 520, 540, 600, 650. People were priced out very quickly when COVID happened and the the interest rates were so low, people were selling in Illinois and just throwing so much cash at it. It made our housing prices rise substantially. I think the statistic was I know I'm such a nerd. Sorry. The statistics in 2020 to 2021 in Indiana or in our area, our pricing jumped 8% when it usually only jumps 2.5%. So houses people bought 2 years ago that they bought for maybe 350 were now worth like 700. And then of course people are like, well, heck, let me sell this and upgrade. And there ended up being more buyers on the market than houses available. So now up here we're like, and NAR, National Association of Realtors, they're like, let's remove some of the safeguards so we can build quicker, which isn't a terrible idea, but it's a Band-Aid fix when all these tariffs are making the pricing of materials skyrocket. So it's like, although builders can now build faster, when they are selling townhomes for $350,000 and people are only getting approved for $250,000, and that's a family that doesn't necessarily want to go from an apartment to a townhome, we're not really fixing anything. So just because we can build quicker doesn't mean that the people who need those houses can get into it. So it's a lot of the same issues. It's a lot of different issues. And there's not a whole lot that the Indiana government is doing to try to fix it.
Yeah, no, I understand the Republican supermajority. They did want to make housing affordability one of their priorities this past year, and they passed a bill. And a lot of it was about trying to get more housing on the market faster, reducing some regulations, reducing some red tape. And there's a whole bunch of potential pitfalls with that. When you're reducing regulations, is the quality of the home going to be as high going forward? Or are you going to run into some problems on the back end down the road? But even then, I understand the lack of units isn't necessarily the problem. Like there is plenty of housing. There are more houses than there are people looking for houses in the country, but they're unable to afford them. You got private equity in there also driving up prices. You've got the utility issue to what you said. You might be able to afford the mortgage payment, but you can't afford to heat the thing, so you have to stay in a smaller unit. What could the state be doing better?
Loaded question. So, like I said, reducing some red tape is a smidge of a start, but unless they're holding those builders responsible for passing the savings on to the consumer, where I think the breakdown is, it's not going to change a whole lot because it's a capitalist society. So they're like, oh, we can save this much money on permits. Let's make that money instead of passing it on to the savings of the house. So I think that incentivizing builders to pass those savings on. I recently talked about how, even though I do not partake, I would support legalizing medical marijuana because just purely as a business person, I already see how much money is going to Illinois, Michigan, and very soon Kentucky. And I truly believe in keeping Indiana's money in Indiana. Let's stimulate Indiana's economy. And another huge issue we have in Indiana, which I'm probably skipping ahead, but since I have rural communities, is our farming, our agriculture industry. It has been beat to hell for years. It's so difficult for them to turn a profit now. Why not offer medical marijuana contracts to our non-corporate family farmers first, so they can start to see that their land still has value and it's still lucrative. So there we go. We have just saved our agriculture industry. And then when people have when Indiana has more money, more of a surplus to do things with, we could incentivize builders. We do have a pretty good down payment program. Up to 6% of the purchase price Indiana will give to certain qualifying people. But right now, the issue really is the monthly payment. So I think that we could use a portion of those cannabis sales to help people buy down their rates. If we're buying down their rate for the life of the loan, or even for 10 years of the loan, it's going to make it easier for them to be able to buy a house if they know that their monthly payment is affordable. It's also going to help them see the numbers work out when they're looking at how energy rates are skyrocketing. I also feel, just on my soapbox, the reason we're seeing such a boom of data centers in the rural areas is because we've beat these farmers to hell. They're not making any money. They get offered these amazing numbers, and they're like, I could either pass a dying industry in Indiana on to my kids, or I could sell my land and not give a rat's behind what you do with my land, but I still have this great sum of money that I could pass on to my children so they can find some sort of lucrative spot to put themselves in. Like, as a businesswoman, I don't blame the farmers for wanting to have a piece of the pie. And I blame the way legislation has beat down these family farms. So I'm not saying that like medical marijuana or cannabis is the answer to all our problems, but it's a really good start. And I think investing in our agriculture industry is a really good start, because when people are getting paid better and there's more money in the economy, people spend more money.
And to the point of those data centers, along the same lines as the cannabis industry, we're concerned about that money leaving the state, folks paying taxes in other states. Well, here we've got this new industry coming into Indiana in the forms of these data centers, which are booming everywhere. And whether you like them or not, they should at least be paying their taxes, and we're giving these folks tax abatements like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So if listen, if you're going to build the things, it should at least be a benefit to the community. And we're not seeing any of that. We're leaving a lot of tax revenue on the table potentially.
So without making a position, because I haven't yet, on data centers, I feel like I'm a storyteller, if you can't tell. So I apologize for taking this off track a little bit, but I think about Zillow. And so Zillow is, it's a platform for people to look at houses, and it kind of has overtaken the real estate industry. And now people are like, Zillow, they're going to put us out of, like, put real estate agents out of work. What do they need us for if blah, 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 which we still have a lot of value and behind the scenes value. So I don't know why these curmudgeons are like, it's like, know your self-worth and market yourself better, but we're not here for that. Anyway, they're like, Zillow's stealing our job. And I'm like, listen, I hear you. Competing with Zillow is kind of difficult, but like the time to fight Zillow was 10 or 15 years ago, when they were like paying us to pay them for leads and like starting to build and make themselves bigger. The reason I tell you this is AI isn't going anywhere, unfortunately. So data centers are going to happen, unfortunately. The time to try to fight it was probably 10 or 15 years ago, when we knew that they were starting to do these things and collect data and give, autonomy in a small way to computers. That's when we should have been fighting it. I'm not saying we shouldn't slow it down, and I'm not saying that we should support it. I'm just saying AI is not going anywhere. So if the data centers are coming anyway, yes, of course, I want Indiana to get a piece of that pie. But that piece of that pie is completely null and void if we're giving them tax abatements that are going to literally probably outlive most of the legislators that are passing the tax abatements. I went to I'm on my soapbox. I went to a Jasper County Amazon, they were trying to tell us how great data centers are. And I even said, like, listen, I'm not saying I'm anti-data center. I'm not saying I'm for data centers, but like, we are, like, Indiana already has one of the lowest minimum wages in the country. We have the federal minimum wage, and most people don't pay very much over it. And Indiana already has some of the cheapest property values. We don't need to entice them further by giving them tax abatements. They're already getting cheap labor and cheap land. And she was like, well, if we don't give them tax abatements, places like Seattle and California and blah, blah, blah will give them tax abatements. Okay, well,
bye.
They don't have cheap labor or cheap land. So we're still winning, my lady. Like, don't try to like gaslight me. I'm in the industry of of land. Like, I know how much land costs. So they're just giving away house and home to try to get a piece of that pie, but we're not going to get the piece of the pie because we've given it away by offering them a tax abatement.
And also, the pie may very well be poisoned. So yeah, then there's that whole aspect of this thing too.
So I'm sorry, let me steal a little bit more time. So like data centers, it makes me so angry because there are places like Finland that have data centers that are also very environmentally conscious, and they have slowed it down a little bit, and they put their data centers, it takes longer time to build and makes them a little bit more expensive, but they build them underground. So the heat that those cause naturally is cooled by the coolness of the ground, and the parts of it that aren't being cooled by the ground, they have technology to convert it into free energy for the people of Finland. And so I mentioned that to the lady. I was like, listen, we have an energy crisis in Northwest Indiana. Why aren't we slowing down? Maybe put these halfway underground, use natural resources so we're not using our very unrenewable resource of clean groundwater to cool these things. And she's like, well, the technology is like 4 years off. And I'm like, I'm okay waiting 4 years, first of all. Second of all, no, it's not. Go buy it from Finland. Anyway, I'll stop.
And that's the thing you run into when you're deregulating and you let industry have the driver's seat and not the people. Another industry like that is the healthcare industry, and that's another one of the big drivers of the affordability crisis that we see right now. Talk a little bit about the state of healthcare in your area, in Indiana, obviously. I think a lot of folks over here on the Democratic side of things would love to see something like Medicare for all. I don't know if that's a thing you can do at the state level. Some states have tried and run into problems. You don't have enough of a risk pool. I think that would have to be done at the federal level. What can we be doing here in Indiana to make healthcare more affordable for people?
I mean, I have some ideas. First and foremost, I think that healthcare is so important because when I grew up on like the government programs that are getting cut, like Medicaid and WIC and all of that. And I didn't ask to be born. Plain and simple. It's not my fault who my parents were and the decisions they made that impacted me negatively. No one asked to be born. It was like a decision made for us. So the least we can do is give people a fair shot at living this crazy thing called life as full and as healthy as possible. And so I do believe that healthcare should not be a luxury item. It is something that you need to literally live. And I'm very blessed because my husband is a 150 operator and we have amazing healthcare, but he hasn't always been an operator. And so I will tell you that my life improved exponentially when I had easy access to see a healthcare provider for anything I needed. And it's not saying I go there and waste the resources every time we have a sniffle. I still very much am like, I'm going to wait a day to see if this is just allergies or a cold. You know what I mean? Like I try to make sure it's like worth garnering using those resources. But like even the 150 in this area, they have like a free healthcare center. Like think of it almost like a CVS Minute Clinic. You can go there for $0 and be seen. And it's not just like a doctor. They also have a lab there. They have mental health services. They have chiropractic. Like they have everything there. They have like having access to that has helped me heal my mind and body so well that it has improved my quality of life. And I say all of this that I feel bad when I know that people aren't getting the same attentive healthcare. Doctors staying in the room with you for like 30 minutes to really get to the root cause of what's happening instead of just throwing a pill at you to treat a symptom. It's amazing. My life has improved like tons. I'm sure that it's probably added 10 or 15 years to my life. Anyhow, ideas for changing it. Again, it is really difficult to do at a state level. But one thing I've heard a lot in my rural communities is there's some places, like I think it's Benton County, they don't have an OBGYN in the entire county. And I don't know if you saw that just this week, the infant mortality rate came out, and Indiana's has not improved. In fact, it's getting worse. Like, especially in our rural areas, they have no access to things like that to even have preventative healthcare issues checked out. And so, like I said earlier, at one point I did work for North Shore Health Centers, and it would be very hard to get one of them to open an entire facility down in Benton or Newton County where they don't have any, because they're also seeing the squeeze of Medicaid reimbursements, and not just Medicaid, just even health insurance, the thing all of us pay a lot of money to. They're deciding they're not paying healthcare centers as much as the services rendered cost. So we're seeing, like, even these federally funded healthcare centers, their access is starting to shrink and not be able to get out to the places that really need it because of the insurance companies. Anyway, think of like a food truck, but that's a medical facility. And so they have this huge, beautiful mobile clinic. And so, first and foremost, I would like to rearrange some of and this is all a pipe dream, rearrange some of the medical budget to try to get a schedule of these mobile clinics getting out to rural areas, like on a schedule, like every Thursday and Wednesday we'll be in blah, blah, blah. And then, Thursday and Friday we go to blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying it is that fixes everything, but at least getting people preventative care in their area is going to help start fixing some of it, until I'm able to find a way, like I'm taking it on my own shoulders, find a way to get the resources for them to get an entire facility. I think it's a really smart way to start to get those services to them. But again, if we could find a new form of revenue for Indiana, it opens up so many possibilities. Medical cannabis. So I'm not like, I don't want anyone to think like, she's a pothead, because I don't even partake myself. It's just looking at it business wise. I don't want to raise taxes on people. I want to reinvigorate the agriculture industry, and I want to find another mode of income for the state of Indiana to start to fix some of these problems.
And I don't think anybody's going to call you a raging pothead. Your position on cannabis is very, very moderate. Medical only. I'm not even hearing recreational. There's a lot of folks out there who would go a lot further than you on that count for sure. We've talked a little bit about we've talked about the roof. We talked about housing. We've talked about a little bit of the kitchen table issues. Certainly, we could go on and on about more, but I do want to talk about the future, and I think a lot of that comes down to education in our state. And we've seen with the privatization of public schools, charters, maybe not as much in your district as it's largely rural. You get these vouchers, this quote unquote school choice thing. A lot of people in your district, I imagine, don't have much of a choice in terms of where to go to school. The public school is the only choice, yet the money is being taken away from those schools and given to private schools, often in the population centers, especially as the suburban areas, the places where they don't really need the discounts per se. And we're subsidizing folks who were already sending their kids to private schools at the to the detriment of our public schools across the state, especially in those rural areas. Talk about the public school situation in your district a little bit.
Well, you kind of just said it. These voucher programs. So, listen, I am a proponent of public school education. And even though sometimes it takes me a second to find the word to say that has nothing to do with my public school education, it has to do with being hit in the head with some steel chairs too many times. I think that public education is so important because it gives people like me that had that rough upbringing at least a leg up on finding a way to make it through life. This is where I think things get foggy. People will just say, vouchers, no. And I'm like, Vouchers have their place. Like, so again, I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to just take it a weird place for a second. I had a home birth with my daughter, and I'm not saying I'm anti-science. It just made sense for us because it was during COVID and I didn't have health insurance. It was like a cheaper way for us, but also I didn't want to fight the battle of like my husband not being able to be there with me, what have you. So we chose to have a home birth. But every step of the way, we made sure that I was a healthy person and a good candidate for it. I had a niece who was pregnant around the same time. She's had lifelong seizures. She can't even drive because they can't get them under control. My point of saying this is if she were like, I want to have a home birth, I would be like, it's your choice, but I wouldn't say that you are quite the right candidate for a home birth because you already struggle with these issues. I don't know that a midwife would be able to take care of you having a seizure in the middle of your labor. So I say all of this to say there are like home births have their place, like for me. So like vouchers have their place. That was a program that was originally intended for people who probably had backgrounds like myself, but were a gifted student and needed a little extra money to be able to go to a private school where they could maybe get an enhanced education or be skipped ahead a grade or what have you. They were more like made like a scholarship program for people whose families couldn't afford it. And so I don't want to say that I would necessarily take away the voucher program altogether. I think a huge issue with the voucher program is they removed that income cap, which means, like you said, people who were already sending their kids, I'm making up numbers, to a $20,000 a year school now get $10,000 of our money and only have to bring $10,000 of their own. And people might say, well, they're taxpayers. Shouldn't they get a payoff on it? Like probably, but also you were already paying the $20,000 anyway. On that same issue, I've talked a lot about how wages just haven't kept up. So maybe that person who put their child in that $20,000 a year school for the first couple years was fine, but because that $20,000 a year school became $25,000 and then $30,000, that person's wages stayed stagnant. Now it's much harder for them to be able to, pay the $30,000 a year. It's almost doubled. I could see us reevaluating the voucher program, potentially raising that income cap to keep up with realistic income and what people are getting in versus the pricing of the school. And that's it. That's where I stand on the voucher program. They have their place, but they need to be regulated. And I know I'm losing my libertarian friends there when I say they need to be regulated, but like you said, they're getting utilized by people who can afford it or can mostly afford it. And it's pulling all that money out of our public schools. Our public schools are very important. And guess what? Those public school kids would be performing just as well as the private school or charter school if they had smaller class sizes. So everything they complain about public schools, they're doing to public schools to make it worse. I feel like I said that in a backwards way, but I feel like it's going to resonate the way I said it. The complaints you have for public schools, not you, broadly, the complaints that people in Indiana have for public schools could get better if we started to give public schools the funding they needed. But do I think that we necessarily don't need vouchers whatsoever? I come from a background where I would have benefited greatly if I could have had a voucher, but vouchers need to be regulated. It shouldn't be a free-for-all. It shouldn't be giving everyone a voucher just because they want their kid to go to a public school. Go to a private school.
No, it's the Eric Andre meme when it comes to our public schools in this state. Republicans kneecap them and then point at them and say, why are the public schools in such bad shape?
Yes, exactly.
So only a couple minutes here, and
I'm so sorry. I'm so long-winded. I apologize.
Oh my God, no. We have so many paths we could go by, and all of these issues are so nuanced. We could dig into the policy details for hours on any given one of them. But I guess I wanted to bring this thing full circle and talk about how we talk to folks in rural spaces and in Indiana in general, where Democrats have a branding problem, right? And if you just remove the branding and you do, the Pepsi challenge, maybe a little bit before your time there, but just blind
I know what you're
taste
talking
test.
about. I'm almost 40.
Okay,
I know what you're talking about.
On issue after issue after issue after issue, the progressives, Democrats, the left have more popular policy stances across the board. Yet, for whatever reason, Democrats in this state have a terrible brand. And how do you overcome that? And I guess I want to bring it back to the professional wrestling of it all. I remember in the 1990s, WCW, NWO, right? And for folks who didn't pay attention to these things, NWO was a faction. This is when Hulk Hogan turned into a bad guy for the first time. It was a big deal, right? And it was like they took over the WCW. Well, the WCW was still in charge, right? But the NWO, they came in and they were like, "Oh, these guys are terrible. We're in charge now. We're here to like shake things up." Or if you look at WWE with Stone Cold and Mr. McMahon, well, turns out, Mr. McMahon was still actually Stone Cold's boss. He just let Stone Cold talk bad things about him on the microphone for effect. Do you think there's a space for Democrats in rural spaces, especially, to talk bad about the Democratic Party as a effective technique to connect with the average voter?
I don't think there's anything kayfabe about that, actually. I am critical of the Democratic Party often. I have said and been very open. I haven't always voted Democrat my entire life, but that's where I land on the political spectrum now, as everyone started to frickin' the spectrum expanded and became something so totally far right that like I could not co-sign on what's happening there. I think that it is healthy to be critical of something, especially when you love it. And I think on the other end of that, it is unhealthy when we're seeing people like the far right co-sign everything that their star player puts out into the world. Like, it's healthy to have disagreements. They say in a relationship, if you never fight, you don't actually have a good relationship, because you're not ever really communicating and getting your thoughts and ideas out there. And so I don't know why we've all pigeonholed ourselves into an unhealthy relationship with our party. There's a lot of stuff, I think, that I don't necessarily 100% agree with that the Democrats do. And it's healthy for me to be able to say that. So like if I'm in a rural area and someone says, I can't even come up with I haven't had any terrible experiences. I think I'm really good at talking with people. But let me just say, like, I can't even come up with anything. Dang. But like, say someone that, leans right or is like a light Republican is like, well, I don't like this. Say that I a little bit agree. I'm going to like, listen, that is a very valid way of saying it, but also see it from my side a little bit. I think what Democrats have is an authenticity problem. Look at Donald Trump. How can we not, though, right? Look at him. He caught on like wildfire because people said he says what's on his mind, like he's authentic. And I believe that's probably why I do so well speaking to people as well, because I don't go into it being like, they're right, they're not going to like this about me. I go into it like, oh, they're a human. And although they see things differently than me, my liberal heart is like, everybody matters, every life matters. Let me hear what they have to say and try to find a way to have chill, because I also think a lot of very left Democrats have zero chill. Like, let me just hear their perspective. I get it. It is like, now there are people turning away from the right, where it took them just finally, gas prices going up, and you're like, oh, all of these other things weren't the problem. The fact of the matter is, no, it wasn't for them. but demonizing them so they feel like they have no spot on this side is not going to get them on our side. And I'm not saying you have to like them. It's like Jesus. I'm sure that Jesus 100% had disagreements. He literally was put to death because he disagreed with the Pharisees, the people in power. Sound familiar? He was crucified on the cross because he disagreed with the people in power, but he still would break bread with them if he needed to. And so I think that, like, the right is like, we are the party of religion and values, and we see the hypocrisy there. But then the left is like, we are the side of, moral purity, but then we don't leave room for people who want to maybe dip their toes in our side. So I don't know if it's because I come from like a very religious and conservative background. So people in my family are still very much conservative, and I've had to navigate my way through that since, the conception and rise of Donald Trump, where it's like, I really don't like the things you're co-signing, but as a person, I know you are better than that. And so I'm not going to give up hope on you. That's how I feel, really. That's where I feel the Democrats are lacking for the most part. Not all of them, but a lot of them are ready to just write someone off because of their political views. And yes, I know they effing piss me off. We are truly stronger together. And I'm not going to say the right has figured that out. I'm going to say the billionaires have figured out that when they pit us against each other, we aren't together, and they can continue to very easily take our rights away from us. But if we can come together and talk about the things that we agree on, but maybe civilly speak about the things we disagree on, but still get together and look at the main focus, and that's seeing that it's the top against the bottom instead of the left versus the right. That is the only way our teenage angst years of 250 years of America, that's the only way that we're going to double and get to our midlife crisis years of 500, is if we find a way to realize we are stronger together than we are apart.
We are such a young country compared to a lot of these the rest of the world.
We're in our teenage angsty years, and that's what we're feeling is, the teenage way of trying to test your limits. That's where America is right now.
Yeah, boy. So again, so much we could dive into here, Kate. Hopefully we get a chance to do this again sometime. I would love to dive into many of those things. But for now, tell the folks where they can find you.
Okay, so as you can see right here on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, you can find me at Vote Kate for State. And then that's actually also my website, www.votekateforstate.com. And if anyone out there likes my message and it's resonating with them, but maybe you live out of my district, I could still use volunteers. You can phone bank from your own home. You don't even have to put pants on. You just need a computer and a phone. I mean, probably still wear pants because that's weird, but you can phone bank from wherever you are. Also I'm very grassroots. So if you have $3 spare, that could help me buy 7 door hangers when I'm canvassing. But still just sharing and liking and interacting with my content, it helps me grow my message and grow my movement.
Very good, folks. Help out Kate however you can, wherever you are. If your message resonates with her, wherever you're at in Indiana, like she said, you can phone bank from at home, but please wear pants. Kate-Lynn, stick around. I'm going to send you backstage for now. I will say goodbye to you after I say goodbye to everybody else. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that was the wonderful Kate-Lynn Holley joining us here this evening. Thanks to her, and thank you for joining us. I will be back Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. with Who's Left This Week, Indiana's only unapologetically progressive Sunday morning politics show. Tune in on YouTube, Facebook Live, and of course at progressiveindiana.net. My guests this week are returning favorites Reese Axel Adams and Sharon White. We will discuss the week's top Indiana stories plus U.S. and international news through a Hoosier lens. Brew up a big pot of coffee and come hang out with us. Plenty of other good stuff on Progressive Indiana Network this week, and we can't do any of it without your support. So please consider contributing to Who's Left and the wider network with a paid subscription if you're able. This independent media project relies solely on the generosity of kind patrons like you to make this information available for free to everybody. Again, that's at progressiveindiana.net. We could also use a follow on social media at Progressive Indiana Network on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the same handle over on Blue Sky and TikTok. It is PIN Indiana. Again, you can find me on most social media sites at some variant of at Who's Left. That is HOOS Left. Send me a DM at any of those places with feedback, tips, ideas, and concerns, or email me directly at scott@whosleft.us. Finally, please forward the show to a friend and have them pass it on too. Let's keep building this project and a truly democratic state, one conversation at a time. Until the next one, this has been the Who's Left Podcast. I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.